ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kidist Belete. I come from Ethiopia, which I am sure all of you have heard of, either in connection with its legendary long-distance runners or in connection with the story of human origins as told by paleontologists. I'm extremely thankful and privileged to have been given this opportunity to come before to you to speak about what is happening halfway across the world from where we are now, in the small villages and towns of Eastern Africa, in the fight against HIV/AIDS and its adverse socio-economic consequences. I will not take your time by repeating for you the well-known grim statistics about the extent of devastation that was caused by HIV in my country. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to take you back to 2002, which for me and my organization was a fateful year because it brought us face-to-face with the HIV pandemic in the most personal way and launched us on a course of struggle that we have been engaged in ever since. In that year, I was living with my two young children in the neighborhood called Yeka, in the northeastern corner of Addis Ababa. I was working at the time as a coordinator of Gender Development Program for a humanitarian and development agency run by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. In the course of my work, I had become increasingly sensitive to the plight of women in Ethiopian society, despite their unbalanced role both in the family and the community. But nothing had prepared me for what came to my attention in 2002 in my neighborhood of Yeka. What I heard was that 3 young children of a couple who had recently died of AIDS have become a subject of a custody battle among distant relatives, people who were not much known to the orphan children up to that point, but whose primary object was getting hold of the public housing unit in which the family was living. I was in shock. As a mother of 2 little children, I felt sick in the stomach when I was told the details about how the contestants tried to exploit the difficulties of the children to benefit themselves. Fortunately, I was not alone. Many people in the neighborhood were also equally shocked. We could not believe that people were exploiting the tragedy of the deaths of their relatives in order to advance their own selfish motives. It went against everything that many of us held dear about kinship, family, and morality, which we believed formed the core of our social fabric. This deeply saddening development was powerful enough to propel a few of us in the neighborhood into action. We took up the cause of the poor children and began a fight to ward off their so-called relatives and find support for them elsewhere. We contacted a famous television talk show host who kindly agreed to bring up the matter on his next show and help find support and care for the children. The response was overwhelmingly generous and quite gratifying to us. Many people were deeply moved by the story and offered to provide support. As a result, the children were able to get financial support and full sponsorship. More importantly for me, the incident compelled me to think hard about what HIV was doing to our society and what we could do if we mobilized against it. It also forced me to think about our family institutions, how these institutions were literally coming apart under the weight of this monstrous pandemic. I realized that I cannot sit back and see this happen around me. I resolved to do something about it. The result was the formation of a grassroots organization in my living room with the support and participation of my relatives, friends, and colleagues from the organization I was then working for. We called it Developing Families Together, a name meant to encapsulate what we then envisioned to be the most meaningful strategy to put up a fight against HIV. We believed, as I do now, that our work of prevention, care, as well as rehabilitation should have as its core element the strengthening of the various components of the African family and the values that underpin its operations. I don't have to describe at length the core components and values that govern the African family to this August gathering, but I must mention two of the most important. One of the facts that the typical African family, particularly outside of the major urban centers, continues to be what is known as the extended family, which includes 3 generations of a single line of kin, such as grandparents, parents, and their children. Among the chief values and principles underpinning the family is the fact that there is an unqualified obligation on the part of the old to provide for the young and vice versa. It also includes support during sickness and other forms of personal adversity, of distress, and the proper or dignified burial of the dead. So we started with this family-centered approach to the problem of HIV and started work. As a point of entry, we thought of identifying places that are small enough for us to begin to make an impact, but also places where the structures and values of the family, as described above, may have been coming under increasing threat due to HIV, but may not have been completely destroyed. This was the background to our Grandmothers Initiative, one of the most interesting and highly successful projects that we have been working on for the last several years. Our Grandmothers projects, which we at the FT consider to be our signature project, if you might excuse my use of what might have become a business cliche, actually seeks to bring together support for these two social groups, namely the elderly and the children, where and when these two do come together in family settings. Very often, it's elderly women and their grandchildren who bear the brunt of the devastation that HIV causes, simply because the age group that has been most vulnerable to infection and the consequent morbidity and mortality have been the adult children of the elderly, who were also the parents of the children. They were, in other words, the most important middle in the chain that is typically of the African family that I have referred to earlier. One of the many nerve-wracking features of our Grandmothers project is the fact that the elderly women were already pensioners to begin with. Pensioners who derived their old age support not from some social security scheme provided by government, but from their children who worked and provided for them. Age suddenly robbed these people of their most valuable source of support. To make matters worse, these women were now burdened with the care of their orphaned grandchildren. For many of them, this meant they either had to drag themselves out to find some kind of paid work or to go out to the streets to beg. The alternative was to starve themselves and their little grandchildren to death. It's simply impossible to exaggerate the plight of these elderly women. However, equally difficult to exaggerate their determination to fight on with the last ounces of their energy, their tenacious struggle to hold on to their grandchildren, and amble on under the most difficult conditions of work and living. Some found work in the households of the better off, cooking food, washing clothes, and cleaning homesteads. Others engaged in daily labor on construction sites and marketplaces. Still others went door to door to beg for leftover food and small change. We have carried out 7 rounds of the Grandmothers Support Project in a small town of Debre Sina, some 200 kilometers to the north of Addis Ababa. In all 7 rounds, the project began with provision of basic support in the form of food items such as grains, cooking oil, blankets, followed up by training towards income generation activities and provision of small amounts of capital in cash or in kind. I don't have words again to say how much this support has brought many elderly women back from the brink. It certainly should interest you to know that now over 2,000 of such grandmothers and their grandchildren can afford to eat 2 or 3 times a day. Their children go to school regularly, and many have, in fact, bank accounts in the local bank. The latest phase of our work with the grandmothers is to bring them together into a community of their own. We are working on organizing them in mutual support organizations on the model of similar traditional institutions in which they pool resources to support a member in difficulty, discuss their common problems, and seek solutions, etc. So we are, so to speak, moving from the rehabilitation of the family to the constitution and reinforcing of the community. One thing I should add, in this long journey of work against HIV, I have myself been promoted from a mother to a grandmother, and I feel a very strong sense of community with our grandmothers. My organization, like many others throughout the continent, is still working hard to push back against the HIV pandemic and limit and overcome its adverse socioeconomic impacts. But it's also working hard to help communities themselves to take the fight forward through cultural education, empowerment of women, and creation of better opportunities for education and self-advancement. It is possible to support this work with a kind of solidarity that acknowledges the dignity and leadership of the young and the old, the men and the women, the children and the adults of the areas touched by our projects. An example of this took place 2 years ago when we invited some of the Canadian grandmothers to travel all the way to rural Ethiopia to see for themselves what we have achieved, commune with the grandmothers of Ethiopia, and return with the story of our struggles and successes. We in Africa believe that we have used your generous donations to good use against HIV and AIDS. But we don't believe that the fight is over and all the battles have been won. There are still many communities, families, women, youth, children, and elderly people we intend to support. I feel strongly that even with all our gains, it is critical to prevent complacency so that we don't lose the ground that we have conquered from the AIDS pandemic. Thank you for standing in solidarity with Ethiopian grandmothers and developing families together. Thank you.